Disclaimer. The information on this show and provided from or through this show is general in nature and is not specific to you or anyone else. You should not make any decision, financial investment, life, or otherwise, based on any of the information presented on this show without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional or advisor. You understand that you are using any and all information available on or through this show at your own risk. Try not to be a f***ing idiot.
Informally kicking off, you saw in my email, some of the topics that I was thinking about covering with yourself. One of them was, usually to start off with, we'll talk about what your background is, where you came from, and then how you got into the space that you're in now. So do you want to run us through a quick explanation? Or you can take as long as you want, no rush.
Sure. So I studied finance and IT at QUT, and whilst studying got very involved with consulting societies, consulting teams. I was kind of molded to become a consultant with the different extracurricular groups I was a part of, and that pushed me straight into consulting. So I was pretty much going to be a consultant from year 3, studying at university, just with all the different things I was involved in, and ended up working as a consultant at Deloitte for almost 2 years. I spent some time in the IoT space, in data analytics, in data strategy, and then towards the end of my tenure there, I worked in robotic process automation. So I worked on mainly financial services projects around Australia and in Asia, working in Singapore and China, helping an investment bank automate their back office. So the main task was one, identifying processes or good candidate processes for automation through a lot of process mapping and understanding how certain functions of the business perform by sitting next to someone and asking them, what do you do from step A or step 1 to step 45 to achieve this output? So you'll have an input, which might be a spreadsheet, for example, lots of trade data coming in from the US and from Europe and from Asia, and the people in the back office would process all of this information with Excel filters, macros, formulas, and things like that. Very manual, very repetitive, and it was our job to understand, what percentage of that task was automatable with robotic process automation software, which is essentially desktop automation, replicating keystrokes and mouse clicks to highlighting things, being able to read text on the screen with optical character recognition. So using a lot of fundamental AI technologies to help companies become leaner, more efficient, and more scalable. And through that process, developed an appreciation for where the world was heading, how technology is really ramping up in certain industries and having real world effects that trickle down to the person at the bottom of the chain within business. And it's wiping out lots and lots of jobs. But at the same time, it's making businesses more efficient with how they operate and gives them an opportunity to focus their efforts or maybe some of that work and capacity and resource on things that generate more value for the business, whether that's financially or in some other capacity. You're putting humans on tasks that humans are really good at doing, not on tasks that machines are really good at doing. So there's that kind of transition point where I think a lot of businesses are going through, and Zapier is kind of like a basic example of that at the startup level or maybe the small business level. So what I was doing is pretty much Zapier on steroids across all functions of the business. And as I said, developed an appreciation for AI, always had an interest in it. And after my stint over in Asia, I resigned, just kind of over the consulting life, and didn't feel like I was heading in the direction that I wanted. Although AI was an interest of me, or to me, sorry, it wasn't fundamentally the area or specialty within AI that I felt like I was best contributing to based on my skill set and passions. Um, RPA is very engineering type automation. It's for the engineering brain, and I'm very much a creative. I like using my creative background. I used to be a graphic designer and a video editor, and I like applying those worlds into business world and contextually trying to understand how I can, help businesses achieve better outcomes through my knowledge in creative and analytical fields. So I've really had a good blend of experiences. And yeah, trying to cut the long story short, after developing that appreciation for AI, moved into chatbots after a bit of experimentation in the cryptocurrency world, in the dropshipping world, and then eventually found chatbots through the dropshipping stores my co-founder and I were operating. So my co-founder is a mate of mine from high school. We caught up after I had resigned to trade crypto together and do a bit of dropshipping. And through that, discovered chatbots on some of the competitor stores we were analyzing, and also built the chatbot for our own store. And it helped with customer service automation and a bunch of things internally, which was super cool for us because it was the first time we had seen a chatbot used on Facebook to automate customer service. All of them were really to drive sales. They were attached to Facebook ads. Very gimmicky, very, I wouldn't say black hat SEO is probably the wrong phrase, but that they use like sales tactics and tricked people into getting offers that weren't really there, and they were very deceiving. And because of my mind in the process automation space, I really saw an opportunity to help businesses with high volume of inquiries and questions coming through Facebook to automate them with chatbots using natural language processing and some process design stuff I had learned at Deloitte. So after transitioning from dropshipping into my business today, Bot Hello, we really took a focus on developing solutions that are actually solving problems for businesses within the inefficiencies of their customer support team. So trying to build in conversational automation solutions within Facebook Messenger that help these small businesses and big brands scale. So that's been my job for the past 2 years, is focusing on ROI type solutions, which are either saving money for the customer or the client and generating sales in some way. And we've been doing that in so many different industries now. Like I think we're up to 10 different industries, working with international brands, all types of organizations, small and large, understanding their problems within their industries and the challenges that they face. And that knowledge and that cross-industry knowledge has been so useful to understand how do we fix problems, or how do we help these businesses scale, given all of the challenges that they face in their separate industries. And all of those lessons that we've learned have been applied across industries. And I think it puts us in a unique position, having not focused on a particular vertical. We can apply, those different functions we've built for the sporting bots to fitness, and fitness to music festivals and things like that. So that's, essentially what we do now. We're a conversational design agency and a bot development platform, and we help those brands develop automation solutions within conversational channels like Facebook Messenger.
If you want to keep going, you can just run the rest of the podcast. You probably don't need me. Don't even need to be involved. He's already covered everything. What am I doing here? I'll come back. I'll have a few drinks. I'll be back in about 30 minutes. Oh, that was phenomenal. You just went over everything. I was just trying to keep a mental log of, wait a minute, I should ask him about that. Now I should also ask him about that. Yeah, we should dive deeper into that bit. Okay. That was phenomenal. Thank you for giving us that clip of your last, 4 years, 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
5 years. Tell me this. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I do have one sister.
Younger or older? Younger. Why, Sean, are you so driven at such a young age to achieve and go above and beyond. And we've caught up a few times. Well, we caught up in person for the first time only a couple of weeks ago. It's pretty evident that you are looking for. I mean, you're pretty driven, and you drive yourself. Why?
Big question. I'm just not interested in living a life where I haven't given it my absolute all. I'm not interested in having regrets, looking back and thinking I could have done more. I've spent a lot of time reading about entrepreneurs, athletes, people who have had abnormal amounts of success, the outliers of society, just out of curiosity for how they did it, what the process was, why did they think differently, or how did they think differently, and is that something I'd be interested in doing as well? And if I compare that path to a path where I'm not attempting that same kind of success, it kind of disappoints me. Sorry, not disappoints me. It makes me depressed knowing that I'm not attempting that path. Like, I've only really got one shot, one life.
Whether you exist or not doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to feel like you are either on the path to making a change that would have otherwise not occurred unless you existed, or you want to be living in a state of creation that you're knowing at that state constantly every day what you're doing every single day is having an impact, that if someone else came through, or basically no one else has come through and is doing this, it gives meaning.
Yeah, it's like the fundamental driver, but obviously it's important to have goals and have a North Star or a direction that the compass is kind of pointing towards. And that for me is, as I said before, to just have a big impact on a lot of people in a positive way. I think the only way to do that is to have resources at your disposal to impact people. So whether that's financial capital, human capital, intellectual capital, you have to understand that your impact reaches only so far based on the types of capital you have. So the first one for me is financial capital. I need leverage to be able to, build businesses or entities or organizations that have greater impact. And I just enjoy being on that journey. I enjoy looking up and pointing really high in the sky and having that goal and working my way slowly towards it. If it takes 50 years, so be it. I'm happy to just keep working and keep hustling. And I'm not really, as I said, interested in doing anything else but working towards like a really big goal. So
do you remember how old you were, or the moment when you started thinking about it, life that way? Was there a moment, or was it just a combination of events that happened at a younger age?
I don't think there was one moment. There was probably a catalyst, and then a lot of moments on top of that made the goalposts higher or more ambitious. So the first trigger for me was me attending this event at QT called Fast Track. It's a networking event for finance and economics students hosted by the Economics and Finance Society. And I was encouraged to go along in my first year. I was actually a gaming and marketing student and had no interest in networking. I had no interest in meeting other students or really participating in things outside of the coursework. I was quite antisocial. I was a gamer. I was introverted. All of those things that I'm, totally not now. But back then I was a really different person. And I went along to that event with quite a negative mindset. Like, I'll go along because my friend wants me to go along, but I'm not going to get anything from this. And I'm going to go home as soon as I can, kind of thing. So I went along, and the first person I met was a guy called Anthony Deacon. And he, at the time, was a grad. I think he was 19 or 20, and he was a graduate in IT. He already had a bachelor's in IT, was a senior lecturer in the IT faculty, and was now studying a master's in medicine. Was
At
part
what?
of
At
all of these
19?
at 19, yeah,
Oh my
at a
goodness.
really young age.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
he started a degree early, and he had just all of these accolades and achievements, and I was kind of shocked because I hadn't met anyone like that. It was the first time I had been introduced to like a high achieving crowd. And that for me, because he was younger than me as well, it kind of said, you can achieve so much more than what you're aiming at right now. And if he can do it, he was just a normal kid, and we got along and had a few beers that night. And it, yeah, totally changed my perception of what's possible because I hadn't read any like business books. I hadn't watched any documentaries or TV shows about like successful and rich people. They were just a category of person that I didn't think I was.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden in my head, I started to gain some confidence because I met people that were like me, who were of a similar age, but had achieved so much more. And yeah, it just kind of lit a fire under my ass a little bit. And I totally changed tact in terms of what goals I set. I joined the Economics and Finance Society off the back of that event, became the marketing director, worked my way up to vice president, and then eventually president. So came totally out of my shell. And from a games design student to president of the Finance Society was a big leap. And that transition taught me a lot about networking, taught me a lot about business in general, how to run events, meetings, all sorts of things. The student society component of my university experience was fundamental in shaping me into the person I am today. And it wasn't just that society, it was like 5 others plus all sorts of extracurricular activities and things that just ended up being a big list on my resume for application time when I was about to graduate, and made it very easy for me to find a job. But yeah, long story short again, I think
That was your
it was
step
that
in
moment.
the door. Yeah. Into
Yeah,
Deloitte.
that was like the snowball, the catalyst, meeting Anthony and a bunch of other kind of interactions and things where I just decided to do things that challenged me, and everything I took on was harder than what I was capable of. And I thought, if I just do the hard things, that's a good North Star to me. Like, let's keep trying things I'm bad at, because that means I learn how to do new things. Why do the things I'm good at? Because that's boring. So yeah,
one thing I really struggle with, Sean, is the idea that working on the things that you're not good at to be able to get better at those things, with the belief that when you come through the other side, you're going to be a better person or you'll be able to achieve more. And if you really believe that, you're going to go down this path in life, pretty much choosing the hardest path possible. Would you agree?
Probably.
And then how can you possibly balance that so that you get, is the point of life then to become the best version of yourself? If it is, and you identify with the best version of yourself, you need to go through some hardships in order to polish who you are, polish your capabilities. If you take that to the extreme, then there's not really a place for happiness or enjoying the path along the way. It's more that you want to just keep pushing yourself, just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and ultimately you'll become this insane person. But maybe life then is not about being happy necessarily. It's more about accomplishing certain things. That I think about that a lot. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that. The best example I can think of is if you go to gym, you're going to put yourself through a world of pain, right? You're actually tearing components of the muscle inside your body, and then you have to give yourself some downtime to heal, but you need to consistently go back to that gym and give yourself some real pain in order to increase and become better over time.
It's a good point. I don't really see the challenges or the things that I'm bad at as a negative. Like, I see them as a curious problem solving task. where I'm put in a situation where I have to find the answer or figure out the solution. And as a consultant, that's what you're like trained to become. You are a tool in the shed that can solve any problem. And I really enjoy like being given a task or a situation or even a business. Like I'm running an agency now where I have never worked in or ran an agency before. And it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, hands down. And this is alongside building a product as well. So we're building the platform. So basically running two companies simultaneously, working with customers for both the product and the service. And I just enjoy how interesting the challenge is. I enjoy learning about getting better at it. And alongside that, if it is stressful, like sure, there are days where the challenge is so hard to solve.
Insurmountable.
Insurmountable, right? I've read the books, I've watched the YouTube videos, nothing's sinking in. And it can be overwhelming because you're as a business owner, you're also spinning all of these different plates. The analogy I love using as an entrepreneur is your plate spinning like 20 plates. You constantly have to adjust and make sure nothing's wobbling. And if you forget one, they start to crash. And that for me, the plate spinning activity is really mindfulness. It's coming back and being grounded and having a mindfulness practice in your life that gives you a chance to breathe. It gives you a chance to focus and a chance to really come to an understanding that all of these things that you're struggling with or are seeing as challenges will be solved. It just will take time and patience. And, the saying, you have to eat an elephant a bite at a time. You've got to do these things in baby steps. And for me, that mindfulness practice is meditating, journaling, brainstorming in my room. Like in my room, I've got a whiteboard, I've got sticky notes. I am constantly solutionizing to these problems, and I very rarely take my phone into my room or my laptop because I like the serenity
mental
of
space.
with my brain, with my thoughts, and putting these things on paper, uninterrupted, like alpha wave state type thinking, and that for me, a crucial component of this mentality of always wanting to be challenged.
I was curious about when you're doing your when you're doing your whiteboard and doing your notes. I've spent a lot of time, maybe 3-4 years ago, before really getting stuck into business, reading all of the books from Richard Branson, reading Steve Jobs' autobiography. Then even from a young age, used to do a lot of mental mapping, taking notes, sticky notes, drawing in a book, right? And trying to connect all of these dots. And it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago for me, finishing uni, and I was still doing all of this, mapping out big dreams, and I got all the books in my other room. When at the end of that year, at the end of those years, wasn't 1 year, it was multiple years, I looked at myself and I was like, well, what out of everything that I've written down, what has actually happened? And I'm looking at it, I'm freaking out because I'm going, all of this that I've written down is great, or visual, the visionary sort of, the creative genius, all of that you want to be, but nothing out of anything that I wrote down ever really happened. And that really scared me to a point where I actually closed that chapter completely and then spent all my time and energy just doing stuff. I kind of had a plan, a little bit of an idea of where it was going to go, but really didn't have much outside of just show up and do it, just show up and get it done. So I'd be curious to know how effective is that mapping note taking for you? Are you finding that that's really, is there a stage in your life where you've just got to go out and do, and then there's a stage of your life where you've got to be creative? And then as a creative, right, where do you move from being in a creative space, coming up with ideas, to being a creative that actually goes and makes those ideas a reality? And because you come from an introverted background, that is a very similar story to me. It's like, as an introvert, you can come up with all these ideas, nothing actually happens because you're an introvert. You don't actually go and pull the trigger and go out of your comfort zone. So tell me more.
It's a good point. I think I use that creative process maybe differently to how people perceive like a whiteboarding session or a sticky noting session. I'm not goal setting. I'm not doing like an affinity mapping ideation process where I'm writing down a bunch of ideas and grouping them and doing different brainstorming activities. Mainly it's problem solving. It's I've got a problem either in the business, mainly in the business, or I've got a goal in the business. How do I reverse engineer that goal, and how do I figure out what I need to do next? So if it's in the back of my mind, like something I think of in the shower or during the day, or it comes up in an email, and I'll have this in a log somewhere where I have to come up with plans for all of these different roadblocks or challenges. The sticky noting session is really problem solving. So it's
a bit more specific, and it's angled towards trying to find a solution for a specific problem, would you say, rather than what would I do? Well, I describe what I was doing as being probably like getting a bit too excited by the vision where I was going to go, and very macro oriented rather than the more micro specific.
Yeah, I'm basically process mapping out what the steps look like to achieve to go from A to B. So where are we now, and what's the future, or what do I want the future to look like, and what are the steps to get there? And that for me is like it's like a fundamental consulting practice and mindset, and it's something that's done a lot in engagements with clients when you're in a room and you're mapping out. All right, this is your current revenue. This is the future revenue. How do we bridge that gap? What are the steps? What do we need to cut? What do we need to create? So that for me is probably something that's been ingrained in me as a consultant, and a skill set or a methodology or an approach that I am very grateful for, because it means that no problem is too great. Like there's what's it called? There's some kind of problem solving framework. There's a name for it that a lot of consulting firms use that I have.
Maybe send me a link after this, and I'll throw it in the podcast notes.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just escaping me. But I use elements of that for this purpose. And it just makes things simpler for me, because I know that, okay, the problem's pretty big, but if I spend some time breaking it down, it won't be. And I just need to spend that time. Otherwise, it'll always be a problem, and it will always, it will never get solved. So that.
I was curious, like even just jumping into what you're doing currently within the agency. One thing you mentioned to me offline was around how much value you got out of working as a consultant at a Deloitte, and some of the processes that they taught you and the structures that they taught you. And I really admire that. I think that's something for younger people. One thing I struggled with going through uni was that they still never really felt like I came out of uni with a skill set like that was worth its weight in gold. And it was not until I kind of got out into the real world, if you want to term it that I started to learn what I felt was actually valuable, like practically valuable. And for you to be able to shortcut is probably a negative word today, but you did shortcut a lot of that time that you could have spent wasted time. But really going and working at Deloitte gives you those processes, gives you some structure on how to operate in the real world, as we call it. And now you're into running an agency, which is really cool, and doing the chatbot technology. I want to not miss out on asking you some questions around that. And let's start with where is chatbot technology right now in 2020? We might skip 2020 because of COVID. There really hasn't been that much going on. So 2019, where was chatbots?
It's a big topic. There are so many I'd say levels of quality and complexity that are made up by the attention to detail during the design process, and also the technologies that's used to give the chatbot application a level of intelligence. So there's really two parts for me with chatbot design. It's good process design, understanding the core problem and writing out that process, and then designing a solution around the process within the conversational application itself. And then there is, which is like the decision tree type bots. You're creating workflows that users click on buttons, they swipe through elements, and they get pushed down different lanes and served information, and it answers questions and it helps automate different functions. You can also connect it to various APIs to capture data or push data back and forth. And then there's the free text element of chatbots. So you've got the button press decision tree component, then you've got the typing the question and getting a response. Not a lot of people know of the former part, that there is this interactive element. A lot of people just envision chatbots as this all-knowing oracle where you can ask questions and it has answers to everything, and it can solve all of your customer service problems. But I can't think of a single chatbot on the market today where that's the case.
Are you defining that oracle concept? Is that what your clients are thinking when they come to you? That's what a chatbot is in their mind?
I'd probably not clients, more general public. Like, that's the perception of chatbots.
Yeah, because from one thing I have struggled with, and I know you'll know more about the reason whys around this than I do, but with the chatbot, it has always been an experience where I type one line of text and it will provide me one line of text, and I don't feel like we're chatting. I just feel like I'm sending text-based requests, and it is trying its hardest to find the most generic, tick as many of the letters that I've sent to it, and it's responding accordingly. And it's not really smart. I mean, I don't feel like I'm talking to someone. I don't feel like it's a chat at this point in time.
Yeah, I tried to define this last night. Actually, I was doing a bit of a brainstorming, problem-solving thing.
Yeah.
And I think there's an issue in the industry with chatbots around the definition of chatbots, and what we identify as a chatbot, what we call a chatbot, and what the perception of the market calls a chatbot. It's really a glorified like database / search engine query.
Yes.
You're sending text-based queries into a system that is trying to read what the query is, and then it's serving you content in response. And that content is disguised as conversational copy. Of course, you don't want to send back like a block of text with a bunch of links. You want it to be friendly and conversational and personality driven and all of those fun things. But that's just the evolution of, I think, chatbots. Is it tries to mimic a human conversation, but it's also doing a bit of process automation in the back end, because it's trying to serve you responses based on queries, really. That's how NLP works, identifying keywords in a string, and it's searching a database of responses and then shooting one back. And people don't really understand that. And I don't think a lot of chatbot companies potentially don't understand that either. They're building chatbot products when in fact they're really chatbot products which have a persona or maybe a face and a personality. But I think the definition of chatbots is wrong, and we're really building conversational process automation disguised in a chat interface. But it is changing. It's a really like hard world to kind of place in the grand scheme of all of the development that's happening in the different countries and industries, because they look so different from industry to industry, from country to country.
What do you mean by that? What do you? That's interesting. What do you mean by that? Different by industry and country?
Sure. I've seen some industries and bots in other languages go for the more conversational approach, where they're trying to build in a purely text-based experience where the bot is, if the bot doesn't have enough context within the first query or question, it dives a bit deeper and asks for more information in the string. It's similar to an Alexa command where you haven't given the Alexa enough. They're called slots. It's basically points of information for it to act on.
Yeah.
For example, if you're purchasing a plane ticket, you have to give the Alexa skill, the dates, the number of passengers, where you're going, price
Weight
point,
of your
all
luggage.
of that.
Yeah.
Correct. If you don't say all of that up front, it can break the experience. And conversational chat applications that encourage that slot filling process where it's trying to request these points of data before it can execute the command. I've seen quite apparent in banking, in insurance, in some of the countries. And I feel like although that is a solution to delivering that service and solving that problem within a chat interface, it is not more efficient than using a form on a website. It's clunky, slow,
Yep.
and you can't see what other questions are coming. You could be filling out a form that's 30 questions long.
Absolutely. On a website.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
That's the big issue. Whereas if I'm on a website filling out a form, I can see what's coming. I can see that they're asking a question about my insurance and that I don't actually have insurance. So I can't finalize this form. But the chatbot gives you no context of what's coming in the conversation. And if you use that filling process, that's an issue to the user experience, because there will be a percentage of people who get to a point in that survey or quiz and they can't answer the question. They're like, well, I've just wasted
all this time. I just answered 15 questions and this has not led to anything. Who do I call? I want to talk to a person because I'm frustrated now.
Yeah.
Exactly. I loved how I was just going to say, I loved how you define in today's day, or maybe 2019, describing a chatbot is really, it's more, the chatbot technology in 2019 is more about text-based requests to a database on the back end versus having a chat. So I want to ask you, what does it mean to have a chat with someone online?
I'd say in the context of chatbots, where it's purely to replicate an emotive human response, and it serves no other purpose other than conversation. You'll probably remember like Smarter Child and those like MSN based chatbots, which were purely for wasting time or people messaging it out of curiosity to see what its answer was to the meaning of life, things like that. When it's purely chat based, there's no process automation on the back end. There's no API connections. There's no calling. There might be to bring certain elements to the surface if you want to ask it the weather or something that's conversational. But apart from that, it doesn't serve much more function than trying to replicate a human conversation with no ability to send requests or, complete some kind of process on the back end.
Have you seen the movie with Jim Carrey, The Truman Show? Is it The Truman Show? Yeah. Okay. When did you see that? How long ago?
Oh, long ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. When I watched that, I've watched it twice now. I need to watch it a third time. One of the things that ran through my mind is the question around what if, right? That's just a mental experiment. What if everyone in my life and the people I come across have been put there and they're actors? They're literally acting out a character. What would that mean for me and how I perceive my life and what I'm doing with my life? Are they guiding me down a certain story or narrative, or are they here literally to just give me whatever what I really truly desire? And that I've played with that in my mind. If we were living in the Truman Show, then the people around me, in my mind, I would consider them as chatbots, but highly intelligent and articulate chatbots. Because I've talked to my mum and she didn't break when I asked her what's for dinner. I've talked to dad, and the amount of the database on the back end for each of these chatbots is quite extensive. So if I'm on a brand's website and I'm chatting to them by text, I probably, if I can feel like the person on the other end is real, would I potentially be more invested in the conversation and in connecting with the brand, because someone who represents the brand, a human on the other end, is creating a personal connection with me via text.
Are you saying is live chat better than conversational automation? Like if you're as a
No,
customer speaking.
live chat in my mind, is the goal that chatbots are aiming to get to. If they can replicate that to accuracy
Right.
that you couldn't imagine, not so if it can replicate a real person as if a real person's on the other end, so someone who's a brand ambassador is on the other end just talking back to me. If chatbots could replicate that experience as if I am talking to someone on the other end accurately enough, I would feel potentially emotionally connected to that brand. Yep. Versus if I was just talking to a chatbot. I know you've got some more interesting thoughts on this, but so I'll let you go.
Sure. Yeah, it's a really, really interesting question, Lex. I wonder if that's where the technology goes, though. I wonder if that's the operative KPI for the chatbot industry. Is it becoming more and more human-like, where it's Turing test? You can't tell if it's a human or a chatbot, and is that ethical? Like, are the conversations that are happening in that space ethical? Because now it can answer anything, and people know that. They're like, oh, every chatbot for every brand can basically answer any question I've got. So I'm going to speak to.
Yeah, just quickly. So then I'm texting the Gucci chatbot and saying, does my butt look good in this? And based on what it answers, if I feel emotionally connected to it, then I'm probably going to buy the product. Right? Yeah. Or, that it continues. Sorry, that's just interesting.
No, you're right. Yeah, I think it's an ethical question as to what is the scope of the conversation that gets automated? What's the scope of the questions the bot will answer? Because obviously you don't need to have, responses about insurance for the Gucci chatbot. You've got a scope of types of questions or keywords that come through. The responses are just much more well crafted and empathetic to the query. It really depends on the goal of the company. If that is important to them to build rapport through conversation and personality, then that will be the operative goal within a text-based medium. But the reason why I say, is this where the industry is going as a whole? I don't think it is. I think, and we've spoken about this in our catch-up, you don't build connection through better conversational responses. You build connection through human-like interfaces. And that's where the avatar space is really starting to blow up, where you can personify the brand in a physical form, whether that's cartoonish or looks like a human. The emotion and the communication through facial expressions and even hand gestures is so much more important. 93% of all communication is nonverbal. So if you can have that component as a part of the interactive experience with the customer, you're able to communicate so much more than you were before. So it won't be about increasing the level of the text-based response quality. It'll be, how do we add in more contextual and emotive animations to the responses that we're giving through hand gestures, through facial recognition of the user and responding with the avatar's facial expressions, all of those things that we're not really considering right now because it isn't a fundamental part of customer service, but will be as people start buying in to the idea of speaking to a face for the point at which they interact with a brand. The brand is no longer an email support channel. It's no longer a phone support channel where you're speaking to some anonymous human in some call center in another country. You are speaking to the brand's ambassador, which is an intelligent avatar that's driven with AI. It has facial expressions and all of that stuff. There's a company called Soul Machines, which is pushing quite heavy and
From New Zealand.
quickly in the direction from New Zealand, raised a lot of money and have a lot of talented individuals working to solve the problem of replicating that human type of interaction within a conversational interface, and really putting a face to these brands, which will become, I think, only a small part in a larger milestone where we're interacting with these human-like avatars in mixed reality environments. So augmented reality and virtual reality, that will be the core way in which customers receive their support with brands, as long as there's enough people with the hardware being able to run these applications. But that's like the end goal, is you speak to a human agent, which is an AI, and it has all of the intelligence of a really good chatbot behind it with the visual of the avatar. And we're just really stepping, on stones closer and closer to that goal, with all of these different initiatives and applications and way in which people are designing conversational solutions. They're just really like cogs in a larger machine that's being created, which will be this, it's basically replicating the in-store human experience, and that's where it'll eventually head. It has to go that way.
One of the exciting things about where it's going is how it's building this. How are we building this technology, and what industries are at the cutting edge of this technology? I would have to say that for me, I see the gaming industry has been leading the way for a really long time. If you think about NPCs, non-player characters, being 3D model characters that you go to and you talk to and you ask them you ask them questions within the game, and you can unlock certain features based on the questions that you ask, and it helps with creating a more enriched storyline. If you think that reality is a storyline that we're all progressing along, there's no one linear path. You can go outside of that path and you can meet different NPCs. So if brands had their own non-player characters or visual characters that they could talk to, that would be really cool. That would be really interesting. The one thing that Soul Machines I find is still struggling with, which is across the board, across all of the avatar technology globally that I'm seeing, with exception of one or two examples, probably out of the film industry, is the uncanny valley. Basically, it's almost there where the visuals look like a real 3D person, but it's missing about 1 to 10% of that last little bit to convince my primitive mind that that this thing or person that I'm talking to is actually real. Because that is missing, it gives you that strange feeling that it's not real.
Yeah.
And you hesitate to interact and feel comfortable interacting with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Soul Machines is trying to recreate the human. Like the prerogative of the company is like recreating the cognitive neurology and the way in which like the brain works. Like they've fully recreated like muscle structures in the face, and the avatars are like living kind of avatars. Like it's crazy. Like the end goal for them, I think, is just recreating something that feels like you're speaking to a human. And I don't know if that sits well with everyone, because people are used to knowing things aren't real when they see avatars and characters in games. They've got a particular art style, or that they're drawn in a way or designed in a way for you to feel comfortable interacting with this copy of a human. And if you're interacting with something where you're not sure how smart it is, because this thing is built with like
There's a purpose
The-
behind it. It's been built, but it's not blatantly. It doesn't have a big sticker on it saying, "This is my purpose. This is why I was being built, and this is how I've been built." Right? It's kind of an unknown to you.
it's threatening. It's slightly threatening because you don't know the extent of its intelligence or what it's thinking, or if it's judging you, or if it's
You don't know its intentions.
its intent exactly. And that can be unnerving, along with the fact that it looks a bit off and it's the uncanny valley element. I've shown a lot of friends of mine like photos of the Soul Machine avatars and asked, "Would you feel comfortable speaking to this?" And it's unanimously no. I would feel uncomfortable.
You should probably
engaging with
tell them
something.
that sometime because
Yeah.
I think they're spending millions of dollars a month building that.
I'm just curious to know like what really would be the goal for the company. Like what does success look like? Is it forcing people to use these things and making them so realistic and lifelike that you can't tell the difference? Yeah, it's curious. Like there will be a lot of players. It won't just be them. There'll be hundreds. There'll be hundreds of people, just like there are hundreds of chatbot companies creating different types of avatars. There'll be cartoony ones. There'll be ones that look like Pixar animations. There'll be Fortnite-like characters. There'll be all sorts. And that, for me, will be the kind of next wave or transitionary point where the chatbot community realizes that we need to push our technology and the intelligence of these conversational text-based applications into the avatars. And those two worlds will have to cooperate at some point when we go from the iPhone and looking at a text-based screen to converse with people and brands to just your spatial environment and having the avatar superimpose itself in your living room, and you can ask it a question about getting refunds for your tickets to the ballet, things like that are all coming, but based on the hardware.
I need to send you some examples from that I've seen. That Unreal Engine, you've heard of Unreal Engine, the game development engine? Yeah, there's some examples on YouTube of I think it was last year or the year before where there was, what did they do? There's 3D scanning involved, but they're using blend shapes so you can actually mesh. Blend shapes basically help program to 3D model and move between different facial animations. So I'll have to link you that, and I'll add that in the notes for the show as well.
Cool.
I think we've covered a lot, and I wanted to wrap it up. Are you comfortable if we wrap it up? Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Your contact details,
no,
I think.
Unless you have any more questions.
No, I'm good. We should follow this up with a part 2 after COVID, the post-COVID episode. Drop us some information about where to find you and contact you.
Sorry, you're cutting out a little bit, but I think the question was contact information.
Yeah, contact info.
LinkedIn. Just search me on LinkedIn, connect, send a message. More than happy to meet up in person now that we can, and have video calls, phone calls, whatever it is. I'm always intrigued by what people think, and really genuinely happy to help if there is a way I can help.
If you wanted one thing from anyone who was listening, anyone in the world, what is the one thing that you're looking for from someone that could help you?
I'm actually looking for an advisor. So if there's someone listening who would be interested in developing some kind of a mentor-mentee relationship, who likes the space I'm working in and likes how I think, I'm more than happy to open that discussion up, because I haven't had one, and I'm curious to know what it would be like to have a bit of direction and a bit of formality to, the way in which I run my business and run my life, rather than always referencing books and things that I read about other people. It'd be good to have, someone to go back to and ask questions.
So someone who's got experience in running an agency in technology space, or specific.
I think that would be very helpful in the short term. An agency owner or someone who has had an agency, and also someone who has interests in where the space I'm playing in is going, who understands everything I've spoken about today, understands the transition from text-based to the avatar world and all of that. Because that for me is kind of the North Star and where we're heading. So if you can give some guidance around, my thoughts and maybe pull my head in if it needs to be pulled in based on what my predictions are, then that would be very helpful.
I might know someone in the agency space that I can intro you to. So cool. Let's talk about it after this chat. Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
No worries, mate. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.